Let's talk about business for a second. I suppose, yeah, look, there's a lot of people online that'll be in the accounting or the financial services industry just online. What are some of the things that you're seeing how AI is currently transforming those industries? I think there's again, you've only got to go to some of the conferences, but what are you seeing in terms of transformation in specific industries?
Oh, look, in finance and accounting, it's quite incredible, and I think Thriday is a really good example of that. So we have been using AI to essentially automate out the bookkeeping element of accounting. So being able to detect through the raw transaction narrative that comes through the bank statement, being able to figure out what that transaction is. So looking at the text, looking at the merchant, looking at codes, and then adding in what I was explaining earlier, the ML part, the machine learning element, is that it's also learning over time. So as more transactions come through the system, or as users edit transactions as well, it's improving the quality of that or the accuracy of it. We're seeing a huge amount in fraud detection. So there's either your bank or existing software startups using it to help detect anything from a fraudulent invoice to an incorrect payment recipient. All of these things you would have seen, for example, if you're a Commonwealth Bank customer, is that when you enter the BSB and account number of a recipient or a person that you want to pay, you'll get prompted to say, this looks accurate, this does not look accurate. And again, that's using some combinations of AI and machine learning and just huge data sets, the deep learning bit. So there's a lot of interesting things there. And I think, fraud detection and also, protecting customer data is going to be one of the big wins out of AI. And then even financial forecasting. So you can take an existing data set. So, for example, if you had a customer that had been with your practice for the last 6 years, obviously you've got the historical records. You can push that into various tools now to then generate a really sophisticated forecast. And that's incredibly powerful in terms of being able to sit down and have a really good conversation with your customer. And it's not a guess. It's not in this scenario, you may be here or you may be there. It's a much richer forecast where you can actually break it down into income and expenses and things like that. And you can even use models where you could say to the model, could you assume with this forecast that there's a seasonal increase over the summer period? All of those different things, right? In other industries, in healthcare, it's improving diagnostics, patient care. So diagnostics in the sense that, you would have seen perhaps a few weeks ago, there was an Australian startup called Harrison.ai. And what they've done is they've got a tool that uses AI to diagnose a wide range of medical conditions. And what it's using is the same underlying approaches that I just mentioned. So getting access to big data sets and then finding patterns and then machine learning. So learning from those data sets and continuing to improve. So to the point where in the future, you get early detection of so many different things, cancers, etc. And then also, even prior to you getting any of these conditions, you'll probably be able to use other data about your body, your physical condition, etc., to forecast the likelihood of you getting those things, right? So that's incredibly amazing. And if you think about, I know we've all had family members that have died of cancer and things like that. That's incredibly exciting. And then in marketing, I know that my wife works in marketing. So they're using AI to optimize campaigns. So again, looking at conversion rates, looking at click-through rates, and basically using AI to say, I want more of the campaign to look more like that, right? Do more of those types of ads. So that you don't need to necessarily go and get a designer or a marketing agency to create every single ad that you put out in the market, but it's using your existing ads, understanding what's working with those ads, and then essentially optimizing those and optimizing, I guess, the customers that it's presenting those ads to. So, look, I think there's so many opportunities. I don't think any single industry won't be untouched by this. Sometimes I actually try to think of an industry that won't be untouched, and I think it's very rare unless it's something that's extremely human. And I actually got a massage a few weeks ago, and I thought this is probably one thing that's not impacted by AI in the short term anyway.
You know, you mentioned a few different industries there. Are you seeing any sort of practical cases that you can share where it's having a huge impact? That health one's quite amazing when you think about the data that we're getting from, you know, the cancer institutes right now. That could be massive for the future, couldn't it? But are you seeing any other big impacts on business right now?
Absolutely. So I think in the you take that approach. So just quickly, I'll quickly explain how it works. So with Harrison AI, what they've done is they've been able to access huge data sets of existing patient data, anonymized, I believe, or assume. And what they've done is with human support, they're basically recording on those data sets, you know, this person had cancer, this person had that, and using imagery and things like that, they can then say, well, this is what that cancer looked like on the imagery. Okay. So imagine that, you know, that all these different images, you know, exactly what the cancer was, you know, how maybe perhaps what medicine they were on, all those different things. And you throw it into an AI system, and then all of a sudden at scale, you can see patterns. Yeah. So you can see, okay, if this is what a cancer looked like on all these other people. So therefore, if it looks like this, that it's likely to be cancer, as an example. Yeah. So think about that sort of pattern matching component of AI, which is, you know, one of the more practical use cases of it. And then what I'm seeing, let's use Thriday's example. So we use that same sort of pattern recognition to do the bookkeeping. Okay. Then in a similar vein, people are using that same sort of pattern recognition to provide customer service. So instead of having a human do a live chat, or have a human jump on a call, you can actually feed all that data into a chatbot, feed all those FAQs verbally, you know, that it can sort of do text to speech, a lot of these systems as well, so they can convert those FAQ responses into text. And essentially the system's learning. Now, that's a huge one because I know a lot of people struggle to provide, say, for example, 24/7 customer support. It's not cost effective. It's hard to get staff. And it's disappointing for their customers. Their customers want to be able to jump on a call after hours, for example, and answer a question. Correct. So you think about that use case. Wow, like it's cheaper, it's more effective, it's 24/7. You can constantly train. I don't need to train, you know, the 20-year-old university student to answer calls. I can just push that data into a system and it does it. And then I think about even again, using health as an example. So there's a really cool startup that I'm across called Mindset, and they're using AI and other things to help people, you know, lose weight, stop smoking. Because what it's doing is it knows the types of either diet or patterns that people who quit smoking adopt, and it's sort of creating a personalized, tailored program for you, right? And it's learning from your own inputs as well. So say, for example, you say, I didn't smoke for 3 days, but then I lapsed. It's using that type of feedback loop to optimize the next set of things it tries to get you to do. So it's quite incredible. Again, you know, I hate to use the word incredible, but it's mind-blowing, actually, all the different use cases and practical ways it can be used.
As it continues to gather momentum, and it's only going to move faster. I know we're going to get to things like, you know, sort of what you think in terms of the future, but the monetary impact, what do you think?
It's almost impossible to put a figure on it. Even Harrison AI, that company I mentioned, the healthcare one, they raised $150 million. And you saw the investment. You would have seen, a lot of you would have seen the investment, for example, that Microsoft put into OpenAI. Musk trying to buy OpenAI. You're talking billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's got to be in excess of trillions of dollars of impact, funding, revenue that are going to be attributed to AI. And that's just the actual pure financial aspect of it. If you then think about the the time efficiency, which you can't really quantify. But even for myself, the amount of time it used to take me to write a blog might be 4 or 5 hours. Now it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can't put a cost, or it's hard to put a revenue figure on that, but that's again trillions of time saved.
Yeah.
And then you think about, for example, the fraud losses or the customer service examples I just mentioned. Then the savings there. So it's incalculable, to be honest, but it's going to be massive, massive.
Michael, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate it. It's always great to catch up with great people doing great things in the marketplace. And I wish you all the best with Thriday, that's for sure.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
My pleasure.